Hey, hey, and welcome back to the Grow Like a Mother podcast. I am your host, Jill Wright, time management expert, and today I am joined by another time management expert. This is so exciting for me. I'm recently familiar with my new best friend, Maddie Morris. Maddie was an athletic little misfit as a kid, getting kicked out of Sparks and Brownies for distracting the other girls and inventing games when she wasn't interested in the planned activity. She's got a career that spanned in hospitality, sales, retail operations for a skincare company, an event project managing, planning, and marketing for a top Canadian entrepreneur from Dragon's Den and Entrepreneurs Organization. She was an executive assistant for 10 years, and she learned to manage the most demanding schedules and get very strategic about protecting the focus and energy of company leaders so that she could keep them operating at their best. Her creative make your own rules mindset drew her to equally nimble and high growth entrepreneurs and companies. And she crafted a proactive, holistic approach to time and energy management that worked so effectively for her and her exec that she began teaching the rest of the team, peers, and then clients to do it for themselves. She believes that taking care of your well being and home life with the same strategic, proactive mindset as you do your business grows the pie of time and energy for what matters most, expanding capacity by working with your natural rhythms and taking advantage of peak performance times. She now shares her knowledge and tactics with the masses, teaching individuals and teams to value and focus their time better, like successful entrepreneurs do. We cover so much of this in our conversation. I am just going to let it roll. We're going to dive right in. You're going to love it. Hey, Maddie.
Hi.
I'm so happy to have you with me on the show today.
Thanks so much for inviting me.
Yeah, this is so fun because we do the same type of work, and it's rare that I get someone on the podcast who is in the same sphere as me talking about time in the same way that I do. So we got connected just because we're speaking at the same event, which now will have passed because we're airing in July. Um, but I was so eager to get in touch with you when I saw the topic that you were talking on, which is like how to plan your week, because that's something I'm super passionate about too. So I'm just so happy that we're connected and pleased to
Thank
have you on the
you.
show.
I remember your message had something along the lines of I feel like we might be best friends when we meet. And it did feel that way when we first met, for sure.
And so fun because we're literally in the same area of town.
Yeah. Yeah. The
What are the
best.
odds? That's so funny. I'm curious today, like I want to explore some of the differences maybe in the way that we teach on time management and stuff like that. There's a couple of things specifically that I wanted to get your perspective on, like um, how we can talk about time management as like energy and attention management. And actually, let's start there. So we both talk about this. Energy management and time management are the same.
Yeah.
What's the backstory for you? How do you lean into that?
Yeah, thanks. So I was an executive assistant for 10 years, and the entrepreneur I worked with, he was very fast moving, scaling businesses, that kind of thing. And when I was kind of managing his time and his focus, suddenly the demand just like drastically outweighed supply of time. And so it was this juggling act, like stressful, kind of having to say no to people, move things around, always juggling. And it forced us to just pause and say, okay, hold on, what are our priorities first? And so kind of shifting into proactive mode. So we need to decide in advance what uh, goes into your schedule. You know, we have big goals as individuals in our company, and so those need to take priority. So then that provided a filter for when requests came in, you know, does it align with these priorities? So that's the first side, the time management. And then where energy management came in was my old boss him and his wife started to have kids. And so anyone who's a parent knows that this is like a juggernaut draw on your attention, energy, becoming a parent. And so suddenly it was very critical to make sure he spent his precious energy and focus on the most important things. And so we kind of expanded the view. So this is a big thing I teach people is like, don't try to separate your work and your home because they're not mutually exclusive, you know? Sometimes if you leave it all on the field at work, you kind of bring home the leftovers, right? And if your family, if your health is an important priority, you can't be doing that. So you have to think about them together and how they impact one another. So that's the energy kind of management side. You need to have proactive, again, measures to take care of your health over the long term. Fuel up right, rest up. I mean, one of the things I love talking about is discipline, disciplined rest. You know, we always talk about like hustle, show up, that kind of thing. And even if your only goal was to do the most and best work at your office, you still should be investing in good rest,
Yeah,
you know?
totally agree. I think
Yeah.
that rest is like one of the productivity tools I teach the most.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel especially with you know, a lot of your clients are moms with ambitious, you know, ambitious in the career realm and that kind of thing. And the the tension that comes up when you have these two very important things to you, wrestling for your attention, wrestling for your time and your focus, that kind of thing. It can be intense. And if you just leave it to chance, something important to you is gonna fall to the wayside.
Right. And so, what do you recommend when people are having this tension between home life and work life, and it feels like there's maybe competing priorities? Like, do you have any tips that you start with as you're working with your people?
Yes. So, well, I mean, first of all, is to give yourself grace because usually what that tension happens because you have high standards for yourself as a parent and as a, you know, in your career and that kind of thing. And so, starting with that, and then thinking about life kind of in seasons and your priorities change. You know, I often pick like 90 days as our outlook window because things change pretty quickly, especially with young kids. So you might have to adjust. And so um, I like to teach this concept about dimmer switches and floors and ceilings. So the the idea is in the different areas of your life and depending on what kind of season you're in, you might have more or less of that. So let's say, you know, with your spouse, romantic travel, spontaneity. When you have young kids, that's gonna cool off for sure. But you don't want to completely forget to invest in your relationship because that is a you know, obviously a really important thing that you're committing to. And so you need to set a floor, basically. What's your bare minimum kind of maintenance mode for the relationship? So that could look like, you know, weekly date night. It could be that you have um, a weekly relationship check-in. That's something that my husband and I do, and it's like very simple, short agenda, but just make sure that you don't you know, build up any resentments and make sure that you still keep investing in your relationship and taking care of each other. So that's one. So you've got kind of, let's say, health, relationship, growth, learning, whatever your buckets are, it helps to think about like what's the bare minimum and what's like the optimal, you know. So if you for health, for working out, let's say for fitness, um, you'd love to work out 5 days a week. Maybe that's not always possible. So what's your bare minimum? If I miss my workout, at least I'm gonna walk after my lunch or something, and then you decide that's your floor. So that's the kind of the idea, and I find that that can be really helpful to again give yourself grace and take care of the things that matter because it's easier to turn something up than it is to like restart from scratch.
Hmm. I love this idea of being in it so consciously that you're aware of like what's the minimum, what's optimal, and you can tweak the level of energy that you're putting in based on the situation of that day. Like you said, it is. I also like to look at it seasonally and that 90-day window. We're so aligned on that. I'm actually creating a planner where it's like it's a 3-month planner. It's a 90-day seasonal planner because at least for me, that is
Yeah.
the most amount of time that like anything stays the same. And then I need to, and then I get bored of like the same old planner anyway. So I'm right with you in terms of that is the right amount of time for people to be able to truly um, plan ahead in any kind of way that stays set in stone as much as anything possibly could.
Yes, totally. And I want to, yeah, let me add one more thing to this too, because the other the other kind of mindset that is helpful is to think like you're a scientist, and you are the subject, you're the scientist. And Katie Milkman talks about this in her book How to Change. But basically to evaluate like without judgment, how did this work? This didn't work, and then adjust your environment without, again, without judgment, or tweak how you go into something instead of just judging yourself and just expecting a different result without changing anything. Um, so that kind of more curious scientist mindset, and then run an experiment. Like a 1 week is the perfect testing ground for something new you want to see if it works with your time, and then evaluate how it went at the end of the week.
Yeah. And a week is a great amount of time instead of just day by day, because as we know, like every day is different. And to get a really complete snapshot of an average day, you kind of need to look at an average week. And so this leads me in because I'm really curious how you approach designing an ideal week. What does that look like when in your framework?
Um, so I guess the first thing is knowing what your priorities are. So if you don't know, what your priorities are, then that's your number one priority, is to determine what are your priorities. So think of your different buckets. Usually we kind of focus on work, career. Um, and then yeah, so set your priorities. What are the goals for the quarter? Um, know how your role ties into the success of the company so that you know which activities are real dial mover activities for you. And so planning out first, like, okay, what matters? And then thinking about yourself. Um, we all kind of have, there's night owls, there's the morning larks, and everybody kind of has like this peak productivity time. And so one of the biggest things that anyone can do is figure that out. What's your best productivity time, and line up the most important thing right there. Um, that one change could make a big difference in your productivity. And so knowing your priorities is a big one. Figure out your pain points, like what's not working, and try to think of workarounds to protect yourself. The other thing is, there's time blocking, of course, but I like to also think about uh, batching decisions, and especially the kind of decisions that compound, that seem small in the moment, but then compound over time. So, for example, you know, meal prep is one, but you can kind of decide once for a bigger period of time versus deciding, every meal 3 times a day is a lot of brain power. And so if you feel that your brain power is kind of at a premium, that's a great kind of area. That might be a great area for you to try and kind of batch some decisions. So that might be, ordering HelloFresh or some meals to save yourself decision power, or planning in advance to make sure that you have healthy options that will fuel you. So now we'll go back to energy. You want to use your best energy for the most important stuff. You want to replenish your energy. Like you can kind of think of to the time of day is linear, but your energy goes up and down. And so you can create waves, like energy boosts with, like a great lunch, a walk, those kind of things. So you can create the wave and then catch the wave and do something important. So this could be related to work. It can be related to home too. So say you're like, I've been so impatient, for example, with my kids lately, and I want to just be a great playful mom for them. You might like walk to go pick them up from daycare or school so that you got some exercise right before to kind of fill your tank, you know? So thinking of those, you know, how to boost your energy and then respect the dips too, you know? So this is the disciplined rest. Like when am I gonna stop working, for example? Set an alarm. When am I gonna go to bed? Set a bedtime alarm. That's way more important than your wake up alarm because it's your bedtime alarm that's going to determine whether you're going to wake up rested. Mel Robbins says if you want to get 8 hours sleep, you need to spend 9 hours in bed. You know, obviously, sometimes some periods of life that can be, you know, tricky, but you just do your best to get the most rest you can. Sleep is so critical.
Hmm. Sleep is like my nutrients. I am like I'm garbage off anything less than 9 hours, which is hard as a mom, you know? And
Yeah.
I remember seeing on your Instagram stories one day this idea that you just shared with us about when you know there's a high energy requirement coming up in your day, something that you want to make sure you put a lot of energy into, to make sure that you're topping yourself up by doing the healthy lunge or the exercise or whatever brings a boost for you in this sort of 20-minute period before that, so that you can catch that wave. And I thought that that was amazing, and that's stayed with me since, and it's really sort of shaped the way that I think about how I show up. So thank you for offering that. I think that's going to be a huge takeaway for the listeners today.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
like I just was writing for this like a webinar for a group of sales reps, but it was I was saying I think I was trying to think of what they would relate to, and so I thought think about like the Ferrari and the old jalopy. Like remember Archie comics?
Yeah.
And so not just for how it runs, but like what are you going to put in that tank? You're not going to put sludge in the Ferrari and expect it to run properly, that kind of thing. Um, and and even a car, like even the best car ever, it's still not going to run if it's on empty. So, uh, you know, don't leave that to chance, especially if you have uh, important things that matter to you that you need to show up for.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
I find, and maybe this is, well, I know it's not just me, but I know there are people like me who are very sensitive to their energy ups and downs, and we feel it in a really big kind of way. And so it impacts me. It'll like floor me if I'm not properly fed. And that impacts everything. And so I have to be really conscious. And I've always sort of known this about myself. I don't know if it's like blood sugar or what, but I should probably look into it. But I've always been really intentional about making sure that I'm like fed throughout the day so I don't experience a big dip and I don't get like crabby and tired and all that. And I think that there are many different ways other than just food that we can incorporate that to help keep us at this sort of like peak productivity, especially in the times that we normally experience it, which I'm curious, when is your like peak productivity time?
Oh, 7 to 10 a.m. I used to joke too with my old team that I worked with that because whenever somebody would have a great idea, we'd be like, oh yeah, that's a three-pointer. And so I used to joke that I only come up with my three-pointers from 7 to 10 a.m. So any brainstorm meetings, strategy meetings, get them in the morning with me, that kind of thing. Um, and so yeah, so the peak for me for sure morning. And so I need to start with good important stuff.
Hmm. I'm the same. Anything that has details, it needs to be done in the morning. Any administrative stuff, any big thinking, has to be done in the morning because I get that afternoon slump where I kind of like do my less important tasks and then I get my super creativity at bedtime. So I've got like a little notebook beside the bed because I know I'm going to get really good ideas then.
Yes, you know what? That the notebook beside the bed is so good, not just for when the great ideas come, but when something that you need to do pops into your head so that it's like I call this an off ramp. Like
Mhm.
um you can be in the middle of something and something else pops up. So you need an off ramp so that it's not just going to keep simmering on the back burner, like taxing a piece of your attention. So when you have an off ramp, that could be like a notepad, that could be even, you know, a calendar, like a recurring calendar event that's called like housekeeping. And you can add in the description like things that you need to do whenever that next housekeeping window
Yeah.
pops up, that kind of thing. So I like this idea in terms of attention management to think of, sorry, I'm going on a tangent, but you need to have like off ramps, so places where when something comes in, you know that it goes and where you know you'll be able to retrieve it. And then um, on the other side of that, like where do things come in for you? Like where do the tasks come in? Who has access to you to make bids on your time and attention? And that's an important place to look for pain too, because if you think about your time, uh, as like if you think of that might sound a little bit meta, but if you think of like a unit of thinking as a unit of time, then something can charge you or cost you like an inordinate amount of time for what it's actually worth if you think of it too many times. So I kind of had this three strike rule. So if something pops into my head, it's like, oh yeah, I have to blah 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 blah, and then I don't do anything about it and pops up again. If it pops up again a third time, I'm like, okay, so I have to do something. Ideally, obviously address it right off the bat, but I have the three strikes helps me like catch it from becoming more than three, which it's common. We
Hmm.
all have stuff that we avoid for different reasons, but the three strike rule is helpful for me.
I love that. You know what I do for my off ramp or
Yeah.
off boarding or whatever? Usually something will pop up when I'm on my phone and it'll like make me think of something. So I just screenshot whatever I'm looking at. And then at the end of the day or whenever I have like a period of time, I go back through the pictures that I've taken as screenshots throughout the day and I make my little to-do list or I figure out where to put the thing in.
I
So I'm like,
love
I'm
that.
not gonna forget.
You know what I do too is I added myself as a contact in my phone. So
Nice.
I'll text things to myself. And part of the reason is because I know that I could use Siri if I'm driving to just text something to myself, especially if it's, like it's a recipe. It's not actually critical, but you kind of, oh, maybe I'll do that. You need to, have somewhere to put it so you could stop thinking about it for now,
Hmm.
you
I
know.
love it.
Yeah.
I love this so much. This is so fun. I'm loving all the tips that you're giving us. And before I let you go and we wrap this up, I am curious to hear your perspective and pick your brain a bit on um, when we have a slump or like a downward energy spiral, how do we get back on track? Because a lot of these things that we're talking about are very proactive and they're very important. But let's be honest, life gets crazy and we're sometimes in reactive mode. And so what are some tools that we can use when we find ourselves in that place?
Um, okay. The first is definitely pause. Um, Try not to like instantly blame yourself. I think that sometimes we do that and it doesn't end up really being helpful. And it doesn't help to just load up your future calendar with all the outputs, okay? So if you're already in a state of stress or overwhelm, don't just expect more from your future self without investing in rest, fuel. Like what do I need for real to like get back to my best? Sometimes writing out. So I have two exercises I'll give really, really quickly. One is I do this like list out your open loops. So just start writing anything that's kind of on your mind, incomplete, someone I need to reach out to, something I wish I did, that's staying on the curtains that I want to deal with, or all the stuff. And then kind of sort through, okay, what's priority? What can I book? What can I offload to someone else? And that kind of stuff. So that's one example to try to do like a cleanup of everything that's on your mind. And the other one is if you're avoiding a specific project. I'm like number one most guilty of this, and my coach just taught me this. He's had to teach me twice because I got caught a second time, but he talked about this cycle of ambiguity. And so if something, especially an important project, has too much like uncertainty that you're sorting through, especially, I mean, I don't know if it's especially with like the ADHD brain, like all the questions go at the same time and you can't sort them in terms of urgency or importance. So anyway, so you've got this like growing ambiguity. It leads to some anxiety And so, worrying about the outcomes of the different things and getting it wrong or this kind of thing. And then that anxiety leads to avoidance. And then you just, freeze, obviously, don't never start. And so going through this exercise of actually asking, okay, what is it that's ambiguous about this? Writing down like the things like, oh, I don't know what's gonna, anyway, write them all down. And then why, what's it making me feel? What is it, what seems like is at stake because of this ambiguity? And then you sort of end up then with like a task list, and it gives clarity to the unclear. And then another guy, Dan Martell, says that sunlight sanitizes. So getting things like written down in front of you, then you're like, oh, this is manageable. Yeah.
It's rarely as scary as we think it's going to be once we get it out of our head, right? Yeah.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I might have to have you back and talk about the whole ADHD and time thing because that's something I'm diving really heavily into at the moment. But um, that is a whole other conversation. So we're gonna
Yes.
put a pin in that intentionally. And I'd love to finish today by giving the listeners some sort of next step. Like, how can they go from here, having heard this conversation? They're like, yes, I like Maddie's style. She is like in my brain. She gets it. She can help me. How can they work with you? Where should they go to check you out?
Sure. I do talks and workshops. So if they lead a team of people at work, they can consider having me in to talk about kind of time and energy traps and how to design your ideal week. This is great on a team because then you kind of can all have the same language and help each other hold each other accountable. So talks and workshops. I do individual sessions called Ideal Work Week, and that's kind of a couple hours, like very deep dive, this 90-day outlook with individuals. So I do those, and then I just provide lots of free content, like tips that anybody can use. So that'll be on my Instagram, on my LinkedIn, and then you can check out my services at wisdomstreak.ca. And I have a free Monday kickoff, just like a checklist to kick off your week. And the more I think about it, the more I actually feel it'd be a good thing on Friday to do to tee up your next week versus starting your Monday morning that way. But anyhow, so there's that. And then I'll just keep kind of putting free content up there and newsletter that you can sign up for on the website too.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Last question, because now I'm just curious. When do you do your weekly planning? Like, what day of the week do you tend to do it on?
I have Monday and Friday. So I do, yeah, kind of like the Monday kickoff. Usually there would be most of the week like pretty good because I have kind of scaffolding. We didn't talk about this, but like, you would want a level of predictability that allows you to like plug important things in, knowing like it's that you've got the energy and all that stuff. Um, so Monday morning and then a Friday kind of a review of the week and a plan kind of for the next week.
Love it. Yeah, that's cool. I tend to not do mine on any particular day. I wait for like an afternoon slump and I'm like, I'd like to be productive now, but my brain's not working. So I'll do my weekly plan for next week.
Yes. It's true. You pre-decide what your future self is gonna do, right? Yeah. And
Mhm.
I mean, we're all human. I don't always do the Monday kickoff and the Friday kind of review, but having them there, it makes it easy to just step right back into that rhythm.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time today and all of the tips that you gave the listeners. It's so valuable. And I know that they went away with a ton of notes, as did I. So just thank you for your time. It is a valuable resource, as we both know,
Yeah,
and I really
thank you so
appreciate it.
much. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you at City of Ohm. So if there's any Ottawa listeners, they should come. Yeah, May 31st and June 1st, designing your week with me and burnout. What's the name
Yeah.
on the
Battling burnout through human design. I'm bringing in a little bit of woo, which is going to be really fun.
love it. I'll be there.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And for all of the listeners who are still with us, keep on growing like a mother.